Hi you guys, welcome to the Beauty Revival where we're inspired by home and the people in it. So for those of you who are new here or haven't been following along with me on my blog or Instagram channel, my name is Brittany and I'm a self-taught home decorator. I started decorating our home about 8 years ago, and right after I started sharing it on Facebook and Instagram, and then subsequently my blog, Oh My Dear Blog, was born so that I could share kind of what I was doing and learning as somebody who didn't have any interior design schooling or background but wanted to decorate my home and have it look beautiful. So I was just documenting kind of the things I was doing that I liked, sometimes the things I was doing that were mistakes, and sharing them with people who were like me, people who didn't have any interior design background but wanted to decorate their homes, wanted to become like self-taught home decorators. Maybe they wanted to launch it into a career, or maybe they just wanted to use it for their own home and to share their advice with their friends and family. And so that's how I got started blogging. And then my blog evolved into the Beauty Revival instead of Oh My Dear Blog. And now I like to share primarily affordable and attainable content for making your house a home. All right, so in today's video, I wanted to talk about 5 mistakes you might be making when it comes to decorating your home. These are things that I have done myself or seen frequently on Pinterest, and they're just little things that I've picked up over the years and noticed how maybe professional interior designers do it, and they're usually just really subtle things that we're making mistakes in as home decorators. And so I wanted to share the things I have learned over the years with you guys about what not to do, and then how to actually shift the things you might be making mistakes in for decorating your home, and how to shift them so that they become something that looks really good instead of something that's a little bit off to the eye. So that's another thing that I want to talk about before I get into these 5 mistakes. The thing about home decorating and interior design is it's an art form. So although we can have a lot of rules, which I'm going to kind of give you some of my rules that I live by, it is an art form. So you can sometimes throw the rules out, and I do all of the time, because it's an art. It's your canvas. Your home is your canvas, and you don't have to follow any rules to make it look beautiful. But with that being said, there are some things that are pleasing to our eyes no matter what your design style is, or if you're going to kind of do things a little bit differently. When it comes to decorating or interior design, there are a few things that our eyes just naturally find more pleasing than others. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those things today. Okay, so the first mistake that I did, and that I see a lot of new home decorators or people who are just trying to start decorating their spaces for the first time make, is scale. So what I mean by scale is the size of the objects that you're putting in your room. So when it comes to decorating your home, I have learned over the years that it is always better to err on picking things that are larger in scale than too small, although you can make this mistake by swinging all the way too far and having, say, like a huge ginormous rug in your living room that doesn't fit. That could be a too large of an item that's in there. But more frequently you see people putting in their living rooms or dining rooms or bedrooms rugs that are too small for their space. So when it comes, and scale doesn't just apply to rugs, it can be maybe having a coffee table that's too small in their living room and it needs to be a little bit bigger. Or it can go even to having way too many small decorative objects throughout their space instead of incorporating some larger scale pieces. So when I am decorating our living room, for instance, I want to make sure that my rug is tucked under the front legs of all of my furniture. I don't want it to just be floating in the middle of the living room with just my coffee table on top. I want the front legs of all of my furniture to be on it. When it comes to my coffee table, I want to make sure that everybody sitting around the coffee table could actually place their cup on the coffee table if they needed to. It's not just this little tiny postage stamp coffee table floating in the middle of your living room. It needs to be large enough that it looks substantial and grounded in the space. Then when it comes to decorative objects, I always like to encourage people that I know that it's more it seems more affordable to buy a bunch of really small decorative objects because they are cheaper, but it actually can look way too cluttered and not like you were intentional when you were decorating your space. So I always encourage people to save their money, don't buy a ton of really small pieces, and invest in some larger items. So a large mirror or some really large chunky vases or larger lamps, larger pictures, things like that. Just even really large decorative items that you can put on your shelves or on your coffee table instead of a whole bunch of really little things. Now, with that being said, I am not much of a minimalist when it comes to my decor style, so I really do like to create little vignettes with cute little things like my brass bunny that I know a lot of you have asked me about, or wooden prayer beads, or lots of plants and things like that. So it's not that you can't use smaller decorative items, you just need to balance them with making sure you're incorporating more large-scale items in your space and make that the focus, and then the smaller decorative things are just accenting that, if that makes sense. Okay, so then another mistake that I see a lot of people making, and this one is huge when it comes to that pleasing to the eye thing that we were talking about earlier, is hanging their items too high on the wall. I don't know what it is, but there is something that makes us think it needs to go higher and higher and higher to look better, and that if we lower it down, it won't look right. But the opposite is actually true. I see people hanging their pictures too high on the wall, their mirrors, clocks. They'll have like a clock way up in the middle of nowhere on their wall, and if it had been lowered to eye level where they could look at it, that would actually look more pleasing to the eye. And this is especially true with hanging floating shelves. So I started hanging floating shelves in our house back when I was blogging with Oh My Dear Blog. And I decided, because we had this huge, large wall that had no architectural detail, it was just blank, I had no idea what to do with it. I decided that even though we didn't have like any built-ins or anything like that, I would create that look. And what I did is I hung a mirror in the center, 4 picture frames surrounding the mirror, and then I did 6 floating shelves from IKEA on either side. But the key with this, and I've seen a lot of people recreate it over the years, is that I didn't place all of these objects really high up on the wall. I know that it's alluring to want to hang it really high up on the wall, because especially if you're recreating this look because you have a really large, tall ceiling, large wall, you think that you need to fill up that upper space, but you don't. That actually can stay empty. You don't need to put anything up there. You want to focus on filling the space that's primarily at eye level. In this case, of course, it can go a little bit higher and a little bit lower, but you don't want everything starting above where your eye level is. You want the center of most of what you're installing on your wall to be at eye level with your eye. And so what this means is, what we ended up doing is we had to hang the bottom of the 6 shelves. So there was 3 on either side. We had to hang the bottom so that it graced the top of the armrest of our couch. Now, we didn't hang them right over our couch so people were hitting their heads. We put them off to the side. But I see most people feeling like when they go to install it in their own home, they're putting it much higher, sometimes a foot or 2 feet higher than that. And if you want to get that designer look, you have to be brave and fight the urge to raise everything up and instead bring it all down. Now, I can say all of this, and then we moved into this house that we're living in, and the first thing we did is we hung a long floating shelf in our living room, and I got my husband to hang it way too high. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was just, I just wasn't thinking. I wasn't really visualizing it and realizing how silly it would look hanging so high. So we did end up having to patch it and move it down. And that's another great thing to do before you start hanging things, is get someone to hold it and shift it down on the wall so that your eye can see, oh no, that actually doesn't look silly being low like that. It looks good. But anyways, I have to share that little anecdote to say, I knew this rule and I still hung my shelf way too high and I had to move it down. Okay, so then another mistake that I see a lot of people making when it comes to decorating their homes is they match everything. So this is usually because people get nervous about how to incorporate different patterns and colors and textures into their space. So they look in, say, a Restoration Hardware catalog or online, at Pottery Barn or wherever, and they see what they have or even more commonly, it'll be if you're buying your furniture from somewhere like in Canada, the Brick or Ashley Furniture, a big furniture warehouse center where they sell really great and affordable pieces, but they tend to sell them in sets so everything matches. And this is something that you want to avoid if you're wanting to get that designer look in your home. You want to be mixing and matching things like, for instance, you can start with your furniture in your living room. You don't have to buy a complete set of furniture that all goes together. You can have a couch or a sectional like we do in our living room, and then you can have 2 side chairs of a different pattern, or ours are a faux leather. They don't have to be one complete matching set. The same thing goes for your dining room furniture. You can buy a dining table, and then you can buy dining room chairs that come from a completely different retailer. They don't even have to come from the same store. They do not have to be a complete set. And this is what's going to give you that really, it looks like a designer came in and intentionally pieced everything together for you into that space. So, and then lastly, I see this mistake being made a lot with pillows. Everybody is thinking that all of their pillows have to match perfectly. And I really like the look of having a variety of colors and textures and patterns. Now, I usually keep mine in neutral shades. You don't have to. You can go full-blown, totally different colors, but they don't all have to match. They can, and if you really like everything to be symmetrical, they can, you can have 2 big ones on the side that match and then your 2 little ones going in, but they don't have to. And if you want that really relaxed, it's been decorated by a professional look, you might want to try mixing and matching your patterns on your pillows, as well as making sure that your furniture sets don't match throughout the house. So then another mistake that I see people making is not using enough contrast in their spaces. So what I mean by that is when somebody goes to decorate their fireplace mantle, if their stone is dark, what I see a lot of people doing is they pick, if it looks like a dark brick or a dark stone, they'll pick maybe a rustic picture frame, like a big picture to go on it that is another dark wood. And then they'll put candlestick holders beside it that are another dark wood, and nothing stands out, nothing pops out from their fireplace mantle. It all ends up looking just kind of like it melds together and blends instead of really being able to see the contrast in color. So instead of doing that, what I always encourage people to do is go the opposite. Now, you don't have to be high contrast, so if your thing isn't like black and white next to each other, that's fine. But let's say if you have a white brick fireplace, instead of doing a white picture frame on your fireplace, maybe you want to do like a bleached wood picture frame, just something that contrasts and sticks out. Again, this kind of goes back to that matching mentality. It feels easier to just match everything to what you have, like if it's your fireplace mantle, to just match it all, but you don't actually want to do that. You want to make sure that you have some contrast so that things don't blend into your wall, but they actually stand out, and then they don't get that overly catalog look. So I'm always trying to encourage people when it comes to being self-taught home decorators and making their houses look like they had an interior designer come in, but they didn't. Your main objective is to completely avoid looking like you pulled your living room from a catalog. I don't even get catalogs anymore. I don't think so, but you know what I mean. Like, even online, when you look at a listing for some furniture or something that a store might be selling, you don't want it to look like you just pulled that whole look out and put it in there. This goes even for like with IKEA. If people are wanting, and I have a ton of stuff from IKEA in our house, if you're wanting it to look more high-end in your home, but your budget is limited for what you can spend on home decor, you can totally buy things from IKEA, but you don't want to buy everything from IKEA unless you want that very IKEA catalog look in your house. You want to make sure that you're mixing and matching your pieces from different stores that would also be affordable, finding things from, Wayfair or HomeSense or Marshalls or wherever you live. They're all called something different, or Target, and making sure you're mixing and matching that. We really want to avoid that very basic catalog look and using that as our inspiration. Okay, and then my last tip that I see people doing is they give up after their first attempt. So when it comes to decorating your home, you are going to make a lot of mistakes. I don't know anybody that doesn't make a ton of mistakes when decorating their houses and have to redo things. Even professionals on TV do this. I started out my journey of decorating by watching Sarah Richardson, and I learned pretty quick that she would think something was going to look great, and then it would go in and she would have to rethink it because it didn't look the way she thought. And that goes back to the fact that this is a canvas, this is an art form. There isn't an exact science to what's going to look perfect in a space, and you have to play around with things and be willing to make mistakes and not give up, and not label yourself as somebody who can't decorate their home because you picked the wrong paint color and now 6 months later you're like, that was really a bad choice, I have to go back and repaint it. Everybody who is decorating and doing interior design is having to do that same thing. You are not incapable of doing it because it didn't work out perfectly the first time and you have to maybe change it. And that is always my encouragement, is if you want it to look like these homes that you're seeing on Pinterest or social media or wherever, be willing to have to go back and change something because it didn't work out the first time, and keep in your mind you're not the only one that has to do that. Everybody's doing it. And hopefully that will inspire you to keep going and push through, because you never know, like, what did I do in our first house? Oh, I painted a wall mustard yellow. And I really liked it, but then I started to look on Pinterest and Instagram and all these things, and I realized what I was really drawn to were light and bright spaces. And so I ended up having to repaint that wall, and it was frustrating when I had to paint it. It was super frustrating because I had just done it and realized that wasn't the look that I was actually going for. But right on the other side of painting it, my vision for a home really started to come together, and everything started to kind of work to get that look that I was actually going for. So don't give up on your first attempt. Be willing to try, be willing to make mistakes, and be willing to try again if something doesn't go exactly the way that you wanted it to the first time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video about 5 mistakes you might be making when it comes to decorating your home. I would love it if you followed along by hitting that subscribe button. You can also find me on the blog, thebeautyrevival.com, on Pinterest at The Beauty Revival, and on Instagram at the.beautyrevival.